It was meant to be a soft return, a gentle re-entry into the cultural conversation, a pastel-washed cooking show called With Love. Meghan designed to convey warmth, healing, and a curated blend of wellness and nostalgia. The visuals were unmistakably delicate, organic linens, fresh herbs draped across rustic countertops. Meghan's soothing voice layered over stories of togetherness and intentional living. It had all the makings of a lifestyle rebrand, one that could distance her from the headlines of estrangement lawsuits and Hollywood flops. But the internet noticed something else, something immediate and unforgiving. It looked exactly like Cooking with Love, Pamela Anderson's quietly acclaimed series that had debuted just months earlier. The aesthetic was eerily similar, from the washed-out color grading to the emotional emphasis on food as medicine. Even the title felt like a near duplication, with just enough difference to avoid legal entanglement, but not enough to escape public comparison. Within hours, side-by-side TikToks flooded the algorithm. Influencer reaction videos went viral, some jokingly calling Meghan's show Pamela Light, while others offered more cutting commentary. You can borrow the vibe, but not the soul. And as the speculation grew, so did the question on everyone's feed. Would Pamela respond? She did, but not with anger. When asked during a red carpet interview if she felt copied, Pamela didn't roll her eyes or throw shade. She simply smiled, gave a slight shrug, and replied, "I didn't really look." Then she paused as if to calculate just how little she cared and added, "If it was inspired by love, that's a good thing, right?" The tone wasn't bitter, it was cool, gracious, and deadly. Because in Hollywood, feigned indifference is the sharpest form of dismissal. Pamela didn't have to accuse, drag, or correct. She simply distanced herself with class and clarity, and in doing so drew a clear line between herself and Meghan. The unspoken message landed hard: I don't need to respond to what's not on my level. The reaction was swift. Twitter branded Meghan's show a knockoff, not because it was poorly produced, it wasn't, but because it lacked something intangible: authenticity, earned grace, a reason to exist beyond the metrics of streaming relevance. Pamela, after decades of tabloid exploitation, had earned her glow-up through silent stillness and reinvention on her own terms. Meghan, by contrast, appeared to be repackaging someone else's narrative into yet another branded effort to remain culturally afloat. The optics were unforgiving. Meghan had once accused the media of twisting her story, now she was accused of twisting someone else's. And while her team remained silent, letting the cooking show speak for itself, the truth was unavoidable. It was no longer enough to look calm and wholesome on screen. Audiences wanted meaning, depth, and trust, and they could smell the difference between a story told and a brand constructed. What Meghan didn't expect, however, was how quickly Pamela's silence would echo louder than her own show's entire debut, triggering not just commentary from fans, but recalibrations from the very platform that had funded her content in the first place. In another timeline, this moment might have been triumphant: Meghan Markle, former Duchess, turned media entrepreneur, stepping back into the spotlight, not through scandal, but through something warm, digestible, and real: food, family, and storytelling. But reality has a different script, and this one came with a harsh twist. Because while With Love, Meghan was meant to reframe her public image, it instead threw it into sharper contrast against a woman who had, without trying, already won the game Meghan was still playing: Pamela Anderson. The comparison wasn't just about visuals or titles, it was about trajectory. Pamela's glow-up wasn't polished by stylists or powered by streaming algorithms. It had emerged organically, forged in silence and pain, strengthened through authenticity. After decades of being reduced to a caricature, she had reclaimed her voice on her own terms. From respected documentary projects to high-fashion campaigns, and even a surprising romance with Liam Neeson, she had stepped into her new era without chasing attention. And because of that, attention followed. Meghan, by contrast, was still maneuvering. Her shift from British royalty to Hollywood creative had been turbulent from the start: the podcast deal that fizzled with Spotify, the Netflix docuseries that promised revelations, but delivered little, new the media cycles that turned every appearance into debate. Now, with a cooking show positioned as both comfort content and a subtle rebrand, it was clear she hoped to reset the narrative, one recipe, one warm voiceover at a time. But the public wasn't buying it, not anymore. They had seen the pattern. Each new project came with hype, curated aesthetics, strategic leaks, and then silence. No follow-through, no consistent engagement, and most damningly, no sense of growth. What was supposed to feel like healing often felt like staging. What should have felt personal came across as packaged. The Pamela comparison made that even clearer. While Pamela cooked without makeup and let the camera linger in quiet moments, Meghan's shots felt airbrushed, and editorial: the lighting too perfect, the pauses too timed. One viewer commented, "Pamela makes you feel like you're in her kitchen. Meghan makes you feel like you're on set." It wasn't about beauty or branding, it was about believability. Even Meghan's lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, had begun to crack under scrutiny. Critics pointed out the suspicious timing of every sold-out product drop, so fast, so limited, and yet so invisible to real consumers. TikTok sleuths couldn't find anyone who had actually bought the products. Influencers received the baskets but didn't post. The speculation grew: was this even a business or just a facade of relevance? That tension between image and intention was becoming the defining flaw in Meghan's brand. And while some fans continued to defend her, insisting she was simply misunderstood, the industry was shifting. The word strategic began to feel like a curse, an implication that everything Meghan touched was engineered, calculated, overly controlled. But the most dangerous shift wasn't happening on Twitter or in the press. It was happening inside the very company that had given her the platform to launch her show. Because behind Netflix's polished veneer, a quiet reassessment was already underway, and it would change everything. It began with a rumor, quiet and easy to dismiss, just another whisper on an industry message board suggesting Netflix had quietly shifted Meghan Markle's status from creative partner to seasonal content contributor. At first, her team brushed it off as noise, but then came the scheduling change. With Love, Meghan, originally pitched as a flagship lifestyle series, a potential successor to shows like Chef's Table or Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, had been slated for a multi-season arc complete with international segments, guest interviews, and a spin-off cookbook. Yet when the second season dropped, eagle-eyed viewers noticed something unsettling. The footage wasn't new. It was leftovers, the same kitchen, the same shots, even the same wardrobe. It wasn't a continuation, it was repackaging. Insiders confirmed what many had suspected: Netflix hadn't funded a second season. They had simply approved the use of unreleased footage from the original shoot cut to feel new, but delivered at a fraction of the cost. A holiday-themed special was being discussed, but not as prestige content, as filler. The shift was quiet but definitive. Where Meghan had once been part of Netflix's future-facing talent strategy, announced alongside massive deals and red carpet promises, she was now relegated to their seasonal programming slate, the same category used for viral but low-risk content like reality dating specials and feel-good holiday fluff. Internally, some called it the stocking stuffer tier content that fills a gap, not headlines. The message was unmistakable: Meghan was no longer considered a power player. To the outside world, Netflix maintained their corporate neutrality. Press releases remained warm, language remained vague, and official statements still spoke of continuing our creative relationship. But inside talent agencies and production circles, the demotion was understood. She hadn't been canceled, she'd been contained. The reasoning was practical, if brutal. Meghan's first season had garnered modest numbers, around 5 million views, far below expectations for someone of her profile. Worse internal surveys showed that viewers were curious about her, but not committed. Engagement dropped sharply after episode 1. Rewatch value was low, and the sentiment analytics were stark. Phrases like calculated, flat, curated to a fault dominated the feedback loop. In Hollywood, numbers can be spun, but momentum cannot be faked, and Meghan's was waning. Behind the scenes, Meghan's own team had sensed the cooling. Calls for second-phase funding were met with polite stalls. Pitches for expanded branding tie-ins were received with enthusiasm, but never advanced past pending. She had entered a dangerous PR phase, not of backlash, but of soft neglect. For a woman whose image once ignited global headlines, the silence was louder than scandal. What Meghan didn't yet realize was that the strategic downgrade wasn't an isolated decision. It reflected a wider unease, not just about her content, but about her entire brand identity. And outside the Netflix boardrooms, in the court of public perception, an even more damaging shift was about to unfold. For a brand built on aspiration, trust is everything, and once it begins to crack, even the most beautiful facade becomes hollow. That's what was happening now to Meghan Markle's American Riviera Orchard, once whispered about in elite circles as the next goop, but increasingly derided as smoke without fire. The early signs of collapse had been subtle. Instagram drops marked as sold out instantly despite no clear point of sale, no influencer posts featuring actual use, no customer reviews or packaging unboxings. Consumers who subscribed to alerts never received links, while journalists who asked for samples were met with polite delays. Initially, it was brushed off as exclusivity luxury through scarcity, but soon skepticism began to bloom. What had seemed strategic started to feel staged. Social media sleuths dug deeper. A TikTok creator with a modest following posted a now viral video asking, "Has anyone actually bought anything from American Riviera Orchard?" The comment section exploded with agreement, sarcasm, and a growing sense of betrayal. One top comment read, "It's not luxury if no one can touch it, it's fiction." And in luxury, fiction is fatal. In a market where consumers pay for experience, story, and authenticity, Meghan's silence became a problem. The brand's voice, once softly elegant, now felt evasive. Without transparency, suspicion grew. Was there even real inventory? Were the baskets just PR props? Was this about nourishment or narrative control? More damning still was the influencer reaction. At least a dozen mid-tier lifestyle influencers had reportedly received products in private jams, oils, linens, but not one had posted organically. A few even posted other brands' products the same week. In the unspoken economy of digital prestige, silence from influencers is louder than criticism. It signals non-alignment or worse, non-belief. A fashion editor at a leading magazine speaking anonymously put it bluntly, "No one wants to be the first to promote something that might implode. Meghan's brand doesn't feel stable, it feels reactive." Even retail interest initially buoyed by the Sussex name began to wane. A planned partnership with a boutique concept store in New York was reconsidered indefinitely after analytics teams warned the brand might face authenticity hesitancy from high-net-worth consumers. It wasn't the products they were fine. It was the perception. The Whisper campaign had worked. Meghan's label no longer felt aspirational, it felt orchestrated. The cruelest irony, Meghan had built her public identity around truth-telling, around breaking silences and challenging narratives. But now her own silence in the face of brand questions felt like the very thing she had once criticized: control, without clarity, perfection without presence. Pamela Anderson, meanwhile, continued her quiet ascent. Another magazine cover, a new film announcement, candid photos of her cooking in her garden, all without a single hashtag. She didn't need to perform healing. She had done the work, and the world could feel the difference. And so as trust in Meghan's brand wavered, a deeper question took root, not about product or press or even Pamela, but about what happens when a brand becomes too careful, too curated, too constructed to be believed. By the time the final seasonal special of With Love Meghan aired, an autumn-themed segment released without fanfare, press tour, or influencer rollout, it was clear the experiment had reached its quiet conclusion. There were no headlines, no viral moments, no curated baskets appearing mysteriously on celebrity kitchen counters. The show had slipped not into failure, but into something far more irreversible: irrelevance. Netflix internal reports confirmed the reality engagement had dropped below projection. Search interest declined week over week, and viewers who started the series rarely finished it. Meanwhile, brand alignment inquiries stalled. Even loyal PR agencies began advising clients to watch how the narrative evolves before committing to cosigns. It wasn't a scandal that ended the momentum. It was fatigue. Meghan's every move had once felt like a cultural earthquake. Now it barely made a ripple. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. People began to ask not what went wrong, but why it felt wrong in the first place. Was it the overbranding, the lack of vulnerability, the insistence on narrative control in an era that rewards rawness, unpredictability, and imperfection? Or was Meghan simply a woman who had exhausted the world's patience with a story she wasn't yet ready to stop telling? Pamela Anderson, by contrast, said nothing. She didn't need to. As Meghan's empire flickered under the weight of overproduction and underdelivery, Pamela rose not through launch strategies or teaser trailers, but through presence. She appeared in unexpected editorials, took roles that challenged perception, and showed up without makeup, without apology, without the burden of needing to prove anything. And that contrast became the story. In boardrooms and group chats, on Reddit threads and podcast panels, the divide sharpened. One side argued that Meghan had fallen victim to a double standard, punished for strategizing in a space that rewards it when done by others targeted for building carefully what others build casually. They saw the pressure of perfection, of legacy, of public expectation, and felt sympathy for the woman behind the brand. But the other side saw something different. They saw calculation in place of clarity, aesthetics, without substance, storytelling as a shield rather than an offering. To them, Meghan wasn't being punished for the story she told. She was facing the consequences of not allowing it to evolve. And so in the wake of this quiet unraveling, one question remains echoing louder than any PR quote or press release. Is Meghan's fall from grace a cautionary tale of over-curation, or a reflection of society's discomfort with women who dare to self-produce, self-brand, and self-narrate too well? Was she trying to stay relevant in a world that punishes effort? Or was her downfall the product of effort that never quite turned into empathy?